They step into the biggest shows with the biggest names, and sometimes they get written on or off in a moment's notice. It's time to find out all the dramatic details of what it's like to be a guest star. With your host, Pete Ferrero.
Let's go.
Well, this is really exciting. Another awesome guest star. I mean, Jamie-Lynn Sigler. This is amazing. And we got connected through Kathleen Robertson, who is just awesome. This is not going to be all about Kathleen, but how did you meet her on
Let's have it be all about Kathleen. We actually did a pilot together last year.
I see.
In like the middle of the pandemic, at like the height of the pandemic, we did a pilot together in LA.
I think it was right around this time too, maybe. I feel like.
Yes,
right?
It was November and December last year. Exactly.
And how is that going?
Well, it didn't get picked up, sadly. And it was one of those that got, dragged out for a really long time where they held it till, I don't know, maybe mid-June or something. But it was a special show. I think that's why. But it was a wonderful experience. It was one of those, it was directed by John Chu, had this incredible cast. It was just a really cool concept. But I think that's what kind of ended up working against it was just something that was difficult for people, wasn't common. So it wasn't difficult for people to understand.
I got you. I mean, and you never know what happens with some of these things. There's shows that go 12 years and then they get picked up. So you never know what's going to happen with it. So maybe it will see their life some other time. I'm curious for you, going back to the early days, where did the whole acting bug sort of start with you?
Well, I was very young. I was, like every other kind of little girl in my neighborhood, was in ballet class and dance class. And I think around the age of like 7 or 8, they introduced a musical theater class to the dance school I was in. And I wanted to try it out because I love the musical Annie and I loved watching all those movies. And we kind of figured out that I had an ear for music and I could sing a little bit. And that's kind of what started it. I started auditioning for community theater and would have the time of my life. I never wanted to be anywhere else. Like as soon as I was done with school, I wanted to be at rehearsal. I wanted to be in every show, every weekend. And it wasn't something I was forced into. No one in my family's in show business.
Right.
So it was completely random, completely a passion of mine. And then I really did musical theater up until Sopranos. I was, I even did summer stock. I did national tours of musicals. My dream was to be on Broadway. It was my focus. It was all I wanted. And then Sopranos came along and I was about 16 years old. And because of the title, I've told this a million times, but I assumed it was musical. So that's why I auditioned.
Right. Oh, this is going to be a good one. All the mobsters are going to sing. Right.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't told it was about mobsters.
Sure.
I think they were very selective with the information that they were giving. So they were just looking for a 16 Italian looking girl from New Jersey.
Yeah.
And that's all I was given. And I was, from Long Island and had the accent and the attitude. So it was a perfect fit.
I mean, I just watched the pilot again. It's so good. And you're so good in this.
Thanks.
Where are you developing this from? You're doing a lot of musical theater and all. That's amazing. But you're working with some heavyweights here in this first season.
I think I had age on my side in the way that I was not fully aware of what I was a part of and who I was working with. Had I maybe been a little bit older and a little bit more self-conscious about what was going on, maybe it would have been more difficult, but I was young, I was loved, I was cared for, everyone was great. I knew they were wonderful, but I didn't realize how big it was.
What was the process for you to even audition for? Did you audition for it?
Oh, multiple times.
I would imagine, yeah.
I went to Georgianne Walken and Sheila Jaffe's office in New York City on the Upper West Side, had one audition. And then this was like pre-cell phones, really.
Sure, right.
I went back home, took the railroad back home with my mom to Long Island, had a message. They want me to come back again the next day. So I went the next day and I read for David Chase. Then I was called back again a couple of days later for producers. And then after that, I screen tested. Just myself.
You're like 16 when this is all happening.
Mm-hmm.
That must have been intimidating for being 16 years old and doing all these things. Yeah. Or were you just young and just like, well, I'm just doing it?
I was used to callbacks. I mean, especially in musical theater. I mean, there's a lot of callbacks. I was used and the audition process in musical theater is like more grueling than anything. I mean, you could stand right there and then be like, you stay, you guys, thank you very much. You can go home. So I was very used to rejection. I was used to the audition process, and this felt cushy to me. I mean, it felt like I had I wasn't in a cattle call line.
Right.
It was like, it felt professional. And I think for those reasons, it felt a little bit more important and a little extra exciting. But again, I was so young. I mean, I was still focused on like where I was going to meet my friends later that day, So I had a good attitude about it all. I wasn't too stressed like how I would be now.
Of course. Did you? I'm originally from Jersey. Okay. So I'm in LA now, but I know that there's a Jersey thing, right, where everybody treats you like the Jersey girl.
Yes.
Right. Is it still happening? Do people are like, I mean, where were you from Jersey? What exit is that?
It's not even so much Jersey as everybody just assumes I'm Italian, which I'm not.
Oh my God.
Even people that know me even people that know me very well are like, well, I know which side of your family are you Italian? And I'm like, neither. Yeah. You know me? I'm a nice Jewish girl from Long Island.
Right. Well, you nailed this. I mean, this is great. I mean, the thing of this show is guest starring and talking about guest star stuff. I'm curious, at that time when you were doing Sopranos, did you realize, like, because you guys had some epic guest stars come on were you aware, like, what that person's not a part of our little family here, but he or she is going to be, joining us for the next 4 weeks? Did you understand what was happening?
Yes. I think for the first time that it really affected me was Jackie Jr. because we had an audition together. We had a chemistry read. So I read with a bunch of guys. But I think also too, as the show went on and got more and more popular, just seeing the guest stars that would come on, like Jon Favreau, and I know, like, it was so cool. And like even at the premieres, I remember Bon Jovi would like come up to us and be like, "I'm dying! Like they won't let me on the show. I'm dying. All I want to do is get on your show." So yeah, I mean, that's like, to be honest, other than going to the award shows and things, that's what felt like, oh, I'm part of something really cool when these amazing people are just wanting to be a guest spot, Yeah,
for sure. Were you going out for other things? Because I've done a bunch of 90210 interviews, and I know that there was a fear in some of the actors that, like, after being on a show for so long, it might be challenging to sort of go out and do other things. Were you still, or were you kind of in the Sopranos world and like, we'll see where this kind of rocks?
I wasn't auditioning for anything else during Sopranos. No. I mean, I did like a movie here and there. I did guest spots here and there. I did Will and Grace, I think, during one of my hiatuses. But I wasn't auditioning for anything else. But as the show was coming to a close, yes, we were well aware that this might be a difficult transition. But it was a pretty good trade-off. I'd rather have been on the Sopranos and have a little bit of a harder time of, having people let go of the idea of me as Meadow than have never been on it at all.
Well, what's interesting too is, though, you talking about letting go of you being Meadow, then you kind of like, you do Entourage, where you're playing yourself like Meadow. What is that process like for you?
The best. What a gift. Because I had been a fan of Entourage for a long time, but I wasn't really clear to like be on Entourage while Sopranos was airing. So when Sopranos finished up, I moved out to Los Angeles, and I had become friends with the Entourage guys, Doug Ellen in particular, who's the creator of the show. And we had run into each other somewhere, and he's like, "Jamie, I got an idea. And we can get you on the show now. Let's do it." And he threw the idea at me. I was like, "Great. Sounds fun." It was supposed to be one-off, one and done. And then after we did it, he was like, listen, I feel like there might be a storyline here. I'm kind of inspired. Do you want to hang on for a couple of more? And I was like, of course, great. And so for me, going from Sopranos to Entourage, which probably has a lot of the same fan base,
no
on
doubt,
the same channel, right?
Yes.
That's when we had to just watch channels and nothing was like on our computer.
Exactly.
And, to make reference to Meadow, but kind of take a little step away. And I was in very many ways playing a character, just,
of course. And maybe a heightened version of yourself,
correct,
right?
Very heightened.
Yes.
It was a really awesome opportunity, because I think that to go from Meadow to playing like some other really like specific and deep character might have been harder, maybe for me as an actress, but also for people in general. And after that, I still ran into a lot of things where I auditioned for stuff, and like especially even comedies, and I'd have casting directors call my agent and be like, I can't, I see her as Meadow, and like she's not, like Jamie's doing a great job, but like it doesn't feel like she's funny to me. So it took me a long time to kind of break out of that.
That's a good point, because when I did talk to Kathleen, she was on 90210 for all those years, and then she had to really make a conscious choice to try to not take things that might put her in this, I don't know, teen drama bubble or whatnot. And for you, I feel like there is definitely that sort of, I don't know, lower, I don't know how to describe it, but like those mafia movies, those feel like the low budget sort of mafia movies, and it would be very easily to just be like stuck in being that person forever. And I mean, that's great for anybody who's cool with doing that, but I'm sure you want it to do, big parts and major roles moving on from it. That was the start of it. So how challenging was that experience?
I think it was just more like that people loved the show so much, and it was especially people within our industry,
of course,
that it was really like I'd walk in a room and they'd just see Meadow. And this is also the first time I'm auditioning for people. You have to realize this is the first time I'm meeting all of these casting directors. I just moved out to LA, so it was all brand new. So it was sticky. It was a bummer. I definitely had moments of just feeling really frustrated. But what I ended up doing was kind of just, burrowing my head down and working when I could. I wasn't a snob about what I would work on and what I didn't. I ended up getting a really fun also arc on Ugly Betty, which was a show I
want to ask you about that. Yeah.
And that was like really different from anything I've ever done. So, all those opportunities were little stepping stones for me to not only within the industry kind of step out of The Sopranos, but also for me as an actress to gain my confidence, because I also was in this really safe bubble on The Sopranos where I was surrounded by some of the best people and the best writing and direction and all of it. And, I kind of needed to learn how to act outside of that, if that makes sense.
It does. I mean, was there anything that you did specifically as an actor? Did you do another like class or something like that? Did you do something that...
I started seeing a lot of different coaches because I actually had no training prior to Sopranos. So it started to feel like, when I'm in my head now, and I felt like I was in the business for the first time than before. And I really needed like a craft to hold on to. I really needed some tools that I could rely on when other stuff kind of got in the way, if that makes sense.
It does. Are there moments or scenes with guest stars, or maybe not even with guest stars, maybe with the main cast on Sopranos, where like this was something that you're either really proud of, or this is a moment of the show that or for you that you look at? I mean, I heard that you didn't even watch The Sopranos when you were... No,
I still haven't watched it in its entirety. I only started watching it during lockdown.
Really? Yeah. It's really good.
It's pretty good. I like it. I get it.
I don't know if you've heard.
It.
Yeah. But were there scenes or moments where you were like this, or that you look back even now? I mean, listen, lockdown was a weird period of time, right? We're reflecting on a lot of people that aren't with us or anything like, and stuff like that. And we lost a lot of people and whatnot. Or was there reflection or time for reflection about scenes or anything like that? Or even not, maybe on Sopranos, something else?
I think it's more about kind of what makes me happy, what my passions are. I think when you take a step away from everything, you're allowed to kind of get a perspective. And the acting class that I was in at the time, went straight into Zooming. And it really just got creative again, because it wasn't about us rehearsing our auditions. There was no auditions. It wasn't about like trying to book a job. It was just like, we've pivoted to figure out how to still be engaged and train and do this. And it became about the craft again and just the fun of acting. And I would say during the year of that Zoom acting class, just this past year, I feel more confident as an actress than I ever have, because it became less about, like I said, getting a job and more about like how fun this is. And we were all taking risks and making self-tapes in our closets and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it just made me kind of fall in love with it all again.
That's really awesome. And I'm curious about the Ugly Betty that you mentioned let's talk about Will and Grace too.
Sure.
Because that's another huge show.
Yes.
And
oh my gosh.
And I love what you do on that show. And it's a comedy. It's different than Sopranos, right? I mean, obviously it's a little bit lighter.
I remember going to the table read and saying to all of them, I don't know how to do this. So if you have any suggestions, please tell me. And of course they were like, you're doing great. You're great. You're doing great. But it was such a blast. I mean, I coming from theater and then doing it in front of a live audience, like I got to have that high again. There's something about performing, like you're sharing an experience with an audience. Like when you have that right there, I think it just ignites something different in your performance, but also you're also getting to rehearse for a week, like a play or a stage production. So it's a different experience.
Was it a live studio audience too? Mm-hmm. So that's another thing that's way different. There's no live audience on The Sopranos, right?
No.
So I mean, I talked to somebody who was like, he freaked out every time he had to do a live studio audience. Oh,
I love it.
But your theater, so that must have just been like right in the world. Yeah.
Love it. But and again, like I said, you're rehearsing for 4 or 5 days prior to doing it. So, I'm used to being on a set where you've got, you're lucky if you get 15 minutes of rehearsal before you do a scene. You know what I mean? There's time is money. Back then, especially we were filming on film. You can't waste time.
Right.
Yeah.
But you have to, that show is so funny. And like, they're so funny on that show. And the episode is hilarious. This is the Thanksgiving, right?
Yes.
It's the Thanksgiving dinner. When you're reading this, is it hard for you to like, not just break out in laughter because of all this?
Oh, of course. I mean, especially most of my stuff was with Sean Hayes.
Yes, and he's hilarious.
Just a genius. So yes, of course. I mean, he improv on tape night. I remember this part where he comes to sit down next to me at our parents' house and there's plastic on the furniture. And he starts just every time he goes to sit down, he slips right off the furniture.
It's amazing.
Just having to keep a straight face and just watch him like play off seeing it's working and just keep going with it. It was like a masterclass in comedy, watching him.
It's so hilarious. And then, when you did Entourage, were there people confused in your world? Like, maybe not in your world, but like, Jamie, wow. Cause I mean, your character is like explicit and,
Yeah. I was coming from Sopranos. It's not like,
which is, fair enough. Yeah.
It's not like, it's not like a homegrown apple pie show.
Sure. Fair enough. Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think and people also know Entourage. I mean, it was a playful show. So I think that nobody.
Have you watched that back?
No, I haven't.
It's interesting to go back and watch Entourage now. Because I don't know if it's one of those shows where, I mean, I love Entourage. I think it's an amazing show. But, with everything where we are in this world right now, I don't know if it would. I wonder if some of the.
No. Oh, my God.
Right. So I'm glad I watched it when I did.
Yeah.
In the time period that I did.
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk about Ugly Betty. I thought you were fantastic in this. And I hadn't seen much of Ugly Betty at all. But I don't know. You brought something really special to it. Talk to me about coming into that world.
Oh, thank you. Well, I remember when I went for my first hair and makeup test and they put this like crazy hair and this goth makeup on me. Like, it was the first time I had an opportunity to kind of really be informed by wardrobe and hair and makeup. And I felt like I really got to create this character. And we didn't really know where she was going. I mean, there was an idea, but we weren't quite sure. So it was really fun to kind of, be a character actor and play with that and not try and be pretty or try to be likable and all the things that they used to always say you had to be to book a job.
Mm-hmm.
And Eric Mabius is so wonderful. And I got to do a lot of really cool, intimate scenes with him and also filming in New York City, where I'm from. It was this really special show. And I was a big, big fan of that show prior. So it was really cool to get the opportunity to work on it. And have, you don't always get arcs like that. I got to have a real arc of growth with this character within the 5 or 6 episodes, I think, that I did. You weren't there just to surface the story. Like, I had a story as well. So it was really nice.
I want to talk about some of that. Like with the Sopranos, like, you have 6 seasons. So you can develop Meadow fully, right? Mm-hmm. You can really spend the time with the other actors. You can do whatever and I want to ask you about that process of developing her. But when you're doing an Ugly Betty and you have 6 episodes in, is it more challenging to say, like, how am I going to, I don't have the 6 years to kind of figure out where I'm going with this. And it sounds like there was like, you guys were figuring it out and all this kind of stuff too. So what's your process like there?
I mean, I just rely on the writing, but I really just see where they're going. I read the entire script. I don't just read my parts, because I see the story and I see where I fit in and I see how I'm servicing that. But I don't, I'm in the job I am now on Big Sky.
Yeah.
I definitely am giving more thought than I ever have to any of my guest star work. But I think in Ugly Betty, I mean, the writing was really wonderful. So I really understood her intentions. I understood why she was doing what she was doing. And they gave me a lot of backstory, I remember, as to kind of the reason she was part of this cult. And I think whenever you have a character, you can't judge them. And so understanding their innocence and understanding where they're coming from allows you to really play somebody fully. But yes, I mean, playing Meadow all those years, I mean, I took her one day at a time, one scene at a time, because she was growing as I was. We were both young girls.
That's what I was going to ask you. You were 16 when you started that. And so you were developing as a person, but then the character's also developing. So, and you said, then that I still think your work is phenomenal. So I don't know how many coaches you needed, but
that's very sweet.
You're doing wonderful stuff. So, but I don't know. I mean, from year to year, as you developed as a person, were you able to add sort of things to Meadow that were from you? And how close are you to Meadow? Except for the whole Italian thing.
Sure. I just deeply understand her. I deeply understand her pain. I think what was the most important thing for me, and I've realized is the most important thing for any character I play, is just really understanding their relationships and their relationships to the other characters. I feel like everything falls into place when I really define how I feel about each and every person that I interact with on that show or in that movie or whatever it is. So I deeply understood how I felt about Tony, and I deeply understood how I felt about Carmela and AJ and everybody else. So I think that growing with her was really natural for me because our relationships evolved. And as she got older and more mature, she was able to kind of, instead of judge her dad and be mad at her dad, want to really understand her dad and almost sympathize, like feel bad for him and protect him. But in the moments where, she would be frustrated with him, she would voice that. And same with Carmela. Instead of I think she went from being really angry at her and frustrated her and thinking that she was, complacent and all of the judgments that she had about her. I think she really came to kind of love her and feel bad for her. And same with AJ. I mean, it was really a beautiful process to get to go through. And, as the show went on and other characters evolved and you have less storylines or you pop in here and there, it it was still easy for me to kind of jump into what she needed and what her objectives were and all of that because of my relationships.
A Jersey question because I have to, because the people from Jersey, like you didn't ask her, when you were doing the show, you shot a lot in New Jersey, right?
Yeah.
So, was there any place or anything that you were like, oh my God, I love this spot in Jersey. It's so great.
We didn't get to hang out a lot. I mean, you
so
know, like, especially as the show got bigger and bigger, you know, we would have like police surrounding the sets and things like that. So it really wasn't like, we're filming and we're going to go get some food over here. Like it was, I wish it was, but I don't feel like I really got to know like the neighbors of the Soprano house's basements where like holding was, but no real like hot spots or anything.
That's cool. I mean, it's no big deal. I just know that they will be, why didn't you ask her about that?
Sorry. I wish I had.
Is the most annoying question that you get these days about the Sopranos? What do you feel about the finale?
I mean, I just don't know what to say anymore. You know what I mean?
How many times can you answer it? It's such a, you know.
And I think in an interview recently, I think David Chase kind of alluded to the fact that he died. So I'm hoping that people can kind of accept that. I think it was just, you know, everybody's different and people wanted an answer or people wanted a definitive ending. But I think that that's the point of the show. You know, for me, I felt like it was the end there, but at the same time, I felt like the entire series could have been edited that way. This was their people's reality. The life could have ended at any moment. You know, this is the life that they chose. And as a family, they had to be in denial and kind of look the other way in order to kind of survive and thrive and live a life.
In terms of the other guest star stuff, we talked about Ugly Betty, where you have a little bit of an arc, but then there is also stuff you've done with like CSI and Magnum PI and all that stuff. What are those experiences like for you? Were you coming in for just, you know, this one episode?
One-offs are great because you tend to have a lot of material. You kind of have a big personality or a reason kind of that you're there or a big storyline. So, you know, one-offs are fun. You get to meet a lot of different people. You get to work with a lot of different people. You get to go to different locations. Like I got to go to Hawaii for Magnum PI, stuff like that. But you know, I'm always very well aware like that I'm on somebody else's show. Like I'm never one to be too comfortable. Do you know what I mean? I'm just, like I said, they're really fun because they're always kind of new and different experiences. You're in, you're out.
One of the things that's interesting is that, you know, is that I've been talking to people about is like learning that when you come onto a set like that, you have to kind of learn the politics and drama of a show, right? On your show, maybe there is, maybe there isn't on Sopranos or Entourage, but you're in the world, right? So it's like whatever, you're in the bubble, but then you have to go to someone else's set and now you're in their bubble.
Yeah.
Right. How do you manage that?
I'm kind of like a sit back and kind of observe kind of gal. You remember in Magnum PI, like they all hang out in between takes and play games or whatever. And they pulled up a chair for me and I'm like, okay, cool. This is how you guys hang. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And maybe when I did CSI, it was like, no, everybody kind of goes off into their own thing. And I sit back and, you know, I'm on my phone or read a book or whatever. I'll kind of adapt. Like I don't come in with my own energy. I'm there to kind of read how this show goes and kind of fit in.
It's interesting. I was talking to Kathleen about when you did Triage, and she said, you know, like there's still this thing about you when you come to set, like where everybody loves the Sopranos, right? They love the work that you did. They love the work the show did, everybody did. And when you come into a set, people are genuinely interested in talking to you about your experiences, I think. What is that like to have that?
It's okay. I understand. But at the same time, like it's the last thing I think people are thinking of when I walk into a room. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm not expecting the conversation. I'm not looking for it by any means, but I'm not turned off by it. I mean, it's a show that meant a lot to a lot of people. And I think that's really cool. And most of the time I'm working people that I respect and love. And so, you know, if they want to talk to me about it, I'm happy to. I just never want to disappoint anyone with like my recollections or stories, or that I don't have any like golden pieces of, golden nuggets to give them or anything, or that it's probably more boring than they think it was. But I look, I mean, I'm in this business. I'm a fan of other people and other things, and I get it. I would be that way about anyone that was on Succession. Do you know what I mean?
So
like
good.
I couldn't, if like Sarah Snook walked into a room, like I couldn't not talk to her about it.
I know,
so
it's so good.
Understand.
I just watched the finale. Did you like the finale?
So good.
It's so good.
The fact that they somehow, like, now all the kids are together.
I know.
So good.
It's really awesome. Talk to me about Big Sky. And
yeah. Well, Big Sky is one of those cool things where it was supposed to be just a handful of episodes. And it's turning into something else where I was, my character Tanya was supposed to come in and be tortured and her boyfriend's killed and like to help give information, blah, 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 and then kind of move on. But now like I'm working for the bad guys. It's really cool that we vibed well. And this is, again, one of those situations where we don't, like, the story is going script to script. Like, they're keeping me around because we're vibing with each other, but I have no idea where she's going. So I'm taking it one episode at a time, one scene at a time. But there's a lot of conversation, which I like about it. Like when I get to set, I'll talk to whatever covering writer is that's on set and being like, okay, this is where my head goes of where she's kind of at now, because she did a complete, 180 in who she is. So it's been fun to kind of play that. And honestly, this last episode I just did, they had me do 3 different versions for every scene. Like this one's meek, this one kind of knows what, and then this one's like super on it. And it's like a fun acting exercise because I'm giving them options of where they want her to go with her, and I'm kind of getting to play all the different ways that it could go.
That's really, really awesome. And what else are you got going on? Like, are you working on anything else right now too, or
just
Big
busy
Sky? That's a lot.
Yeah, Big Sky keeps me busy, especially because I filmed in New Mexico and I live in Texas. So flying back and forth and doing that, probably be on that, I don't know, for the next couple of months. So that'll take me straight into pilot season. And I have a show that I'm kind of putting together and developing to start pitching out there. But, I'm a mom of young kids, and I don't put more on my plate than I can take. And so, I'm also just one that kind of is constantly surprised by life and what shows up whenever you think like, oh, I haven't done anything in a while. Is this done? Then a new job comes, so just kind of seeing what life brings me. Like I said, especially with my kids so young, I feel really fortunate to kind of be able to pop back and forth to work and still be really present for them.
Yes. And in your, you've been pretty open about your battle with MS and whatnot. Yeah. How's that going? And
I've lived with the disease for 20 years, and I have my good days and my bad days as far as like how I feel about it, not necessarily physically. But I think a lot of it more is I'm in this stage now where I'm figuring out how to kind of really own it. I think for so long, it's like, how do I cover it up? How do I fix it so I can fit into this and that? And I'm getting to this place now where I'm like, it causes me to have like a little bit of limp when I walk. And instead of kind of covering it up, I feel like I'm ready to sort of like really represent who I am and the millions of others that are like me, and just be like, this is me and this is how I move, and it's okay. And we don't have to talk about it because a lot of people in the world move a lot of different ways. Sure. And I think that feels like when we're talking in the topic of representation and inclusion, like it's not about hiring somebody to talk about a story about MS. It's hiring somebody with MS that's very capable of doing this job. And I think what I've learned is like, I don't slow a production down. I show up prepared. I do my work. Do I walk a little bit slower? Yeah. Can I not run? No. But in the end of the day, like everyone has things that they come in with that they can and can't do. And I feel like I'm starting to gain the confidence to advocate for myself more, to stand up for myself more, and to own it more. If that makes sense. But that just comes with each and every job. Big Sky Included has been one of them. And, it's a process, but I don't claim to be perfect. I don't know it all, but I'm trying really hard for myself and others that are like me.
Absolutely. Well, I'm pretty much done with all my questions.
Cool. Well, this was really fun.
Yeah. I wanted to say though, I mean, when I said that I was going to be doing this, there is, people they love you. You know what I mean? Like they just love what you've done in all of the roles that you have,
that's so nice.
brought yourself to. I mean, especially, in that, the thing that you did in the Sopranos, like they feel like they grew up with you. There's a thing, and of course what you're doing now, they just love your journey, and I'm just so grateful for your time to talk to me here. It's been awesome.
Thank you so much. I've had a great time.
All right, very cool. Thank you. Well, that was Jamie-Lynn Sigler, and she's just so incredible as Meadow and on Entourage and all the things that she's worked on. Now, I'm super stoked for next week. Going back to the 90s again, this time with David Lasher. We're going to talk about 90210. We're going to talk about Blossom. We're going to talk about Touched by an Angel. We're going to talk about it all. So sit back next week. David Lasher. This has been Guest Star. I can't wait for next week.